and other areas, South Africa, Mexico, have lots of farms. And that's what really spells the difference. We have the control of that crop from the ground up, from the seed up, really. And so we're looking for that crop to emerge naturally, healthily, and then extract that at the perfect time, harvest it and dry it at the perfect time, so that each bottle is very much consistent with the last lot, and with last year's lot, and with the year before. And that's what allows for the building of data. Clinicians and universities and research institutions, you know, we know that naturally there's going to be differences each year with the crop between a plant and a different plant, between a farm over in Europe and a farm over here. And so to have the ability to analyze for those spectrum of proper constituents, and then do blending of a crop that might have had a little more drought this year, and one that had a little different stressor, might reach a different threshold of different potencies. We don't alter those within the plant or within the field or within the harvest, but we do blend them. We will blend them to make sure that then there's some continuity in each one of the bottles that a person might secure the same results that the clinical data shows. And we've had more, well, research institutions look to the Schwalbe products because of that continuity, because of that ability on a large scale to have Ginkgold be Ginkgold, whether it was, you know, 3 years ago that it was dried, or this crop, whether it was grown in France or here in Sumter. They're going to get consistent results, consistent ratios and products. And that's that vertical integration. We have the researchers that are asking the questions. We have the fields where we are realizing the very things that the horticulturalists and the pharmacognosists recognize as the very important range of fractions of bioactive principles in these. We have the drying units, we have the extractors, we have the spray dryers, and the finished form goods manufacturing, all the way to your store, basically, vertical integration, keeping that quality in a vertical integration. Most companies will say, we're top quality, right? I don't know how many presentations, trainings you've been in. I doubt anybody said, we're almost just as good as everybody else. I doubt anybody's ever said that. But most of the U.S. manufacturers start at that line that has been indicated on that. They start with, you know, bulk material. They'll start with already dried material and then put it into capsules, put it into tablets, where we are that vertical integration all the way back to the very research, the investment of what's that next plant going to provide to us, and how do we best provide it. You can take the word of an herbalist who's you know, coming from Manila, New York the week before that, and Texas the week before that. And this is Chicago area, right? Yeah, it's Tuesday, right? And but you can also look at the third-party certifications, and we've got lots of them. You know, if I had time, we'd go over each of them. That one's a really tough one to get. The therapeutics goods from Australia, very hard to achieve that one, and they have to send up their reviewers to reaccredit us for these certifications almost every 9 months, every 6 to 9 months, to keep those current. And of course, FDA approved facilities and GMPs approved, even the European models, the organic certifications. NSF, we were the first one to comply with the NSF certifications for good manufacturing products. There's the European equivalent of the FDA. So throughout the world, we need to keep that consistency and that quality, because we're prescribed. We're used by physicians. We're in the pharmacopoeia. So the quality has to remain, well, we continue to raise the bar on quality throughout the world. Lots of different brands. I know that I would rather field the questions that you have, but I know we've got a mixture of expertise and experience in the group. So I was asked to just talk about some of the different products, but please raise questions as you have them. Herbal singles are the greens. Those are just whole herbs. Only water is removed from those. So it could be if it's herb, it's usually the aerial parts of the plant, or it'll say on the bottle, this is just the root, this is just the leaf, this is just a certain part of that particular plant. The only thing that's removed then is water. And that makes this very simple, it makes it very inexpensive. It's usually the entry point. Someone reads about a particular herb or a particular concern and they want to try it. They'll venture to introduce an herb into their lifestyle, into their regimen. And so low price, widely available, 118 different products, long history of use, safe, very safe, low toxicity, because it's a food basically. It's a food that's been dehydrated and stabilized in those capsules. The yellow labels are formulations of whole herbs. Occasionally we'll put a vitamin or two in there where the indication is important. Vitamin C, for example, for the veins is very critical. And these herbal formulas, though, are largely, again, whole herbs, dried, only the water removed, and these have multiple actions. Where a given complaint, like, well, constipation, you might use Cascara sagrada and get a good effect one week and not so good the next one, and maybe a little bit of gripping. And so with a formulation, you're able to mitigate some of the, perhaps, reactions to a particular individual herb, and we can reduce gas with the fennel and some of the things, the griping and complaints where a single herb might introduce something that's a little bit different for the individual. The undesirable effects, minimize those. Broad range of action.
How are you dehydrating?
How are we dehydrating?
Yeah.
Well, each herb has its own specifics in terms of time and temperature, and even oxidation rate. For example, Cascara sagrada, you actually want to dry much longer than, say, chamomile or something that the phenolic compound is coming on, because if you don't oxidize some of the Cascara sagrada cascarosides, then they will be too profound in their activity. You actually have to dry them as if, well, you're spending 2 years just sitting there oxidizing, or you can really get some major gripping. You really want to age that Cascara sagrada root before it becomes practical for the individual to use. Others are kept at lower temperatures so that we're preserving some of the more volatile compounds and dried over time. Each one has its own specifications, standards for drying time, drying temperature, aeration, and the like.
So they're all individual?
They all have, we're looking at various compounds in them to make sure we preserve those. For ginkgo, for example, ginkgo leaves, we're harvesting over 10 tons a season of ginkgo leaves, and we get them all drying within 6 hours so that there's no molding, no mildewing, and you're able to preserve that at a certain temperature. Those ginkgo flavone glycosides are quite stable, quite hardy, and so you can dry them at a little more accelerated rate and still preserve the triterpene lactones and the ginkgo flavone glycosides.
So they're in ovens? Or?
They're in, yes.
Okay.
Usually tumble dryers or tray dryers that are going through and air is circulating around them. Most of them are tray dryer units.
Can they recapture the volatile oils then?
We definitely do. We'll use, on whole herbs is what we're using drying, but on oil fractions we'll use steam distillation to liberate those from the lavender blossoms or the mint leaves. Or we'll use alcohol and water extraction to extract that. We'll use pressing in terms of our oils, cold pressing. We try to use the most natural, least chemical situated solvents. Alcohol is about the strongest solvent we use, grain alcohol, ethanol, to resolve that from the mark. And that's on the extracts. You guys are already ahead of me. And that's where we start getting concentrated. All the greens and the yellows are just dried, and only water is removed. But when you get to the purples, then you are removing some of the cellulose. You're concentrating all the other active nutrients down, and if it is a phenolic compound, we're looking to just get the fat-soluble constituents, and we're removing the cellulose, the fibers, amyloid material, and things that are like dietary fiber, so that the actives, the biologically active compounds, are more concentrated and provided in these purple lids, purple labels as an extract. And extracts, of course, are offering us a way to get higher dosaging, to improve compliance, so people aren't having to take multiple capsules to get kind of the potent parts, the concentrated parts of the actives and markers. And this is where the person who is looking to hasten the time when they'll see a result will be attracted to the extracts, or if they are one that is propelled, influenced by the research, they want to get those. I'm trying to think of the black cohosh, simisafugosides. They know black cohosh is good, but they've read the research where simisafugosides at such and such an amount really saw dramatic improvement of the hot flashes and night sweats associated with menopause. So they're looking for simisafugosides. That's what we can standardize to. We never alter, we never spike, we never change the composition. We merely extract to concentrate the range of those, the spectrum of the active ingredients of an herb, and then spray dry that. We'll make a liquid extract, usually of alcohol and water, are our principal solvents, and then we'll spray dry that in a tumble dryer. That makes for a solid extract that's compressible, that can then be put into capsules and tablets to stabilize those. So smaller dosages, smaller amounts. Oh, at least you can back into wherever you're going.
Just not quick enough.
Higher compliance in the research that's there. Now, the difference between the standardized purple labels and our phytomedicines, our true branded products, is just a meticulous set of standards. These are the ones that we will make sure come from our fields, that we're harvesting them when we have seen that that's when they are at their richest, highest levels of the active constituents, and we're analyzing for that. We know the growing time, and we take those plants into the lab twice a day during certain parts of the fruit season, of the harvest season, and see, as that plant, is that field matured enough, has it reached its potential, then it's time to harvest that. And to have your own equipment there, so you're not waiting for a farmer down the road, a co-op or whatever, that you might miss, even by hours, the perfect harvesting window. It makes for a better consistency, better quality. Where we standardize for maybe 1 or 2 active ingredients in the purple line, we will look and measure and make sure the ratios are appropriate for dozens of active compounds in our phytomedicines. So literally a broad range of things. Each one is measured. A high-pressure liquid chromatography to see the spikes and the peaks and the valleys. Make sure that they are meeting those same criteria of that a healthy plant that the monograph in the German Commission E or the Pharmacopoeia requires to make sure it is a true phytomedicine that can then give you the same results that we're seeing in the various clinical studies. This is often the very best value because it is usually the highest concentration. We use a 50-to-1 concentration of ginkgo, for example. 50 pounds of leaves to make 1 pound of ginkgo EGB 761 extract in those tablets. And so you get a real high dosing, and we make sure that all of that is bioavailable. Something that is still not required by the dietary supplement industry. The FDA and the regs that were released did not include, from pressure from our own industry, the wherewithal to establish whether your tablet even breaks apart, whether it even releases its goods to the human physiognomy, whether it's digestible. Don't have to look for that for dietary supplements, but of course, Schwab on Nature's Way Enzymatic Therapy, we hold ourselves to the OTC standards where you do have to check for that. You do have to check for disintegration and dissolution, make sure they're bioavailable. And especially in our phytomedicines, they have to be often very, very quick to be bioavailable and get into the body to see that effectiveness with the analyzed results. I wish we had time to go over all the sections, but they're in your handout. I wish we had time to go over homeopathy. But I wanted to get some of the products that are of interest to you that Carrie forwarded to me by way of assignment. We've got the Primodophilus probiotics. Enzymatic Therapy has their pearls and probiotics as well. They're nice, 1 billion well, from 500 million for the kids to $1 billion in most of the pearls, and then even 5 billion in the advanced, the higher dose. Just lost the elite.
Elite.
Pearls Elite have 5 billion per pearl, and the Primadophilus line basically takes it from that dosage on up. So higher counts, higher dosages, higher potencies in the Primadophilus Nature's Way line. We were the first company to launch a full line of probiotics in the United States, and of course both enzymatic therapy and Nature's Way probiotics guarantee their potency all the way to the end of shelf life. Not at time of manufacture. It really takes some expertise to know the stability, know the dying curve, the rate of well, exposure to oxygen and heat and temperature and humidity, and to know what their life stage is, how they can handle packaging, how they can handle interactivity with other species, to then be able to formulate with the amounts that will then show the full label claim at the end of shelf life. That takes some expertise that our industry has yet to acquire throughout, but we've been doing that and keeping track of these things for some years and using those manufacturers that know their stuff. Wish I could reach that for you. I don't see anybody eating anything.
We tell our customers not to have that.
Well, I'm with you there. I'm with you there.
And that everything doesn't look like so
I mean, I had my flax and hemp already for breakfast this morning, so I'm not really all that tempted. But please don't hesitate. If anything, the coffee, the orange juice, anything that's there, please enjoy. Because we have our probiotics to help us with that. And the metabolic reset.
How about carb blockers?
Which one is that? Which is the carb blocker?
You're fine.
That's really, I think, the reason why we might see some success. I mean, how many years, every year we come out, this is the product that's going to help us lose weight. And still, worldwide, the World Health Organization, we're still escalating in our rate towards obesity worldwide. So we haven't even plateaued. So nothing that we've brought forward has made a difference, at least globally. Of course it's made a difference in the individual lives that really apply this kind of thing. But I think this year we have something that might make the difference, and when you say carb blocker, that is one of those, but it's the nutrients that we've been hybridizing out of our diet, favoring the sweets and favoring the savory flavors in our fruits and vegetables and the like, and crops. And we've been removing the bitters and the sours and these other things that aren't so, our affluence leads the farmers to move towards things that are tasty and sugary instead of the bitters of our diet. And we're replacing some of the notes, these other flavors and nutrients that build satiety. Those have been missing in our diet, and we can talk about that after probiotics, but you do hit on something there that I think Katie even asked me to talk a little bit about, the Herbal Slim and the Aqua Splendor. These are nutrients that reintroduce to our diet something that has been taken out over time, that literally build satiety, that literally build leptin, that build adiponectin, that build the hormones that tell the body, you're full, you're satisfied.
No.
Where did you see in January they released that study that showed that fructose, when it is refined out of fruits and vegetables, fructose registers nothing on the brain. But the brain, you can take 2,000 calories of fructose in that soda, and literally nothing sparks. It tastes great on the tongue, but the brain never says, wow, that's a lot of calories. You really have reached well beyond what you're going to need for the rest of the day. Stop eating. Nothing happens with fructose. Doesn't register. And so we're reintroducing some of the nutrients. We need to avoid some of these kinds of high sugar that don't make any difference to the satiety of the body, but reintroduce those nutrients that give us that all-important ability for that most important exercise to lose weight. What's the most important exercise to lose weight?
Push away.
Push away from the table, right? And And
I'll
if you're,
take this.
if you're full, if your body, because we long for that, right? Food is such a delightful thing, such a delightful
It's a
experience.
comfort for so many
It's such
people.
a comfort. And so, you know, to say, you've got to just resist, and we've got all this temptation here, so you can see the point of what we're trying to say.
Joyce, is there any water there?
But if you're building that, I'm afraid I already broke the seal and drank, oh no, maybe I didn't on this one. You're welcome to have my bottle if it's, yeah, that's
Oh,
fine.
thank
Fresh
you.
bottle.
Thanks.
It's the one in my car that I'd already broken the seal on. I don't know, what was I saying? Building the satiety, building those hormones is something that we're just now starting to see these supplements come back out with. And if we have time, we can go over that. But let's talk probiotics for just a second. This is really a daily need now. We used to think probiotics, take them, make sure you take them when you're on an antibiotic, or after a cleanse, or after an illness. But really every day, because we are exposed to so many processed foods, there's the donuts there, a lot of processed food. But that processed food does no longer have the natural range of probiotic flora. All fruits, all vegetables, all foods, fish, come with lactic acid bacteria in them. About 1-to-4 ratio, really. That blush on a blueberry or on a grape, loaded with probiotic bacteria. Because plants need to defend themselves from the bacteria, pathological bacteria and virus of our environment, the fungi, the spores, and all those other things as well. And so lactic acid bacteria is something that is employed by the immune systems of all living tissues, really. And they all have their special substrains of the same species of probiotics that you and I have in our gut, that like our gut, that like the apple peel, that like the guinea pig gut, that like the chicken gut. They've all evolved these strategies to use these probiotics. But with processing, with pasteurization, with radiation, with preservatives, that ratio can get really out of shape. In the nature, when that gets to be 1 in 14, things start to spoil. You can smell when something has lost that equilibrium of friendly flora to pathological organisms, that they are replicating faster than the lactic acid bacteria. Things spoil, they go bad. But we don't see that, we don't perceive that in these pasteurized foods and the like. That's why milk can still be a real big cause of listeriosis here in Chicago. Not too many years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years now? 3 to 4 years ago, public school systems in Chicago had a huge outbreak of listeriosis amongst the kids because the chocolate milk that they drank had come through. It was pasteurized, so they got rid of the bad bacteria, but everything down chain, someone forgot to clean out the valves that fed the cartons, and a little bit of listeria biofilm formed in the valves and introduced a little listeria into this pasteurized milk. There's no probiotic bacteria there to check listeria. Probiotics produce what? That helps slow down the rate of replication. What is it? Acid, lactic acid principally, that's why we called it Lactobacillus acidophilus. There's the start, or maybe an addition to your presidential coin collection of James Garfield. And wow, I don't know, if that's the start of your presidential coin collection, you can take it to the bank right now. You've got a valuable collection there. Antique Roadshow will list that and say it's worth at least $1, your collection. So it's very, very valuable there. And thank you for that, for the correct response. Acid, and these organic acids, not just lactic, but we know that they produce malic and acetic and even a little phosphoric acid that we use to make ATP energy with. These wonderful acids that these families, Lactobacillus and Bifidobacteria, produce, they slow down, attenuate the replicative rate of pathological organisms. So in the presence of that, you can even tolerate it, and you do. You eat listeria all the time. You eat a little bit of E. coli and Clostridium and Bacillus and Salmonella even. But if you've got those good friendly bacteria in their right proportions, you keep moving, you keep thriving. when that's pasteurized and just Listeria is reintroduced, the CDC said that these Chicago students that were hospitalized for weeks after, nobody died, thank goodness, but they drank 200 billion colony-forming units of Listeria without any of the other counterbalancing probiotics in that milk, and that made them very, very nearly deathly ill. So it's a constant battle, really, because of the processing that we do, a constant contest for dominance, to replicate, to thrive. All of these life forms wanting to do that. And probiotics help us produce mucin. This is another thing that is coming to the forefront. What is mucin, and why is that important? Especially to our industry. We are such great purveyors to be able to talk well of where does mucin affect? Yeah, that mucous membrane. Oh, it's not a president, but she's as good as any president. Sacagawea on that one.
Jody will be doing a bank deposit.
The mucous membrane, mucin is what keeps that slippery and yet still fluid. And that is really our domain. Natural health. If we can help people to repair that mucous membrane and that digestive tract, you will take them so far down the road of good health and healthy aging. Something that we'll talk about in detail tonight at our dinner training lectures. But that mucin is the slippery substance. And we of course attack that and ignore that and malign that and call mucus a monster when in fact it is a very important protecting agent, very important line of defense for our immune system, and mucin really makes it both fluid and slippery, so it traps junk before it gets attached to you. Probiotics and pathological organisms thrive. They colonize first around the mucus cells. And pathological organisms take your mucus cells offline, leaving congestion, leaving not protection, so that bacteria and viruses can get in there and thrive. But the probiotic bacteria actually improve mucin production. That's why there's a good flora and bad flora. Yeah, they actually improve your digestion, improve that mucus production. And when they are producing these acids, they also propel the uptake of your minerals and your water-soluble nutrients that require that acid medium for better absorption. So how many years some people, well, a lot of people I'm finding now are good with it. But when we first launched, 60, 90, and 100 billion colony-forming units in a capsule, there's a little bit of, wow, isn't that a lot? I mean, I'm a little bit not sure. But these are definitely natural amounts, not extraordinary amounts of bacteria, as told in some of the science that's just coming out, where if you wanted to get the right number of probiotics, to be able to prevent rotavirus from infecting. Rotavirus is something we're always getting in our diet and in the water supply and from the air. It's the #1 cause of illness for young children, 5 to 8, 5 to 9, I think, something in that range. But if you want to exert an effect to prevent rotavirus from spreading, the maximal effective level is 10 to the 8th colony-forming units per milliliter, or 100 million probiotic units per milliliter, and that's an in vitro data, so a test tube. They actually saw where rotavirus stopped spreading in human cells when there was that concentration of probiotics in that medium, in that petri dish. We extrapolate that number to what the average meal size is, average comfortable stomach capacity, then you are going to require 100 billion colony-forming units of probiotics to get the concentration that will prevent the rotavirus of that meal from infecting. So that's an actual number that can be applied to the numbers of probiotics that are important to have in our daily diet. Safety in high dose, 11 trials went from at least 5 billion up to 53 billion in this Cochrane review that showed it would prevent the diarrhea associated with antibiotic use. Anything less than 5 billion didn't really work. And that diarrhea that is so common after an antibiotic would still afflict those people if they were taking less than 5 billion. But they found that 20 billion, 30, and 50 billion, and anything over 5 billion was more successful at preventing the diarrhea associated with antibiotic use. So the balance that we're talking about and the safety of these numbers, we really don't even know. People will ask me, can you overdose on these? Don't know yet. The most critical clinical trials were at 900 billion colony-forming units a day for 90 days, still could not observe any adverse effect. So we don't know what the no observed adverse effect level is, or where the first side effect or adverse effect might be appearing. So they are quite safe and we are quite exposed to them and dependent upon them for protection in our daily diet. Balance on the other end, you get 95% of the samples in this particular study of barbecue meats had almost 90 billion colony-forming units of Listeria per serving. That's just a norm to have that much Listeria in low temperature bulk cooked meat. So you're getting lots of things in there. Deli meats, USDA says it's really kind of the major cause of listeriosis and food poisoning, and ranges from 1 billion to 316 billion colony-forming units total plate count of bacteria in a single serving. So if you can consume upwards of 400 billion in a meal, and 1 in 4 is the natural, safe, non-spoilage level of probiotic to pathological bacteria, then 100 billion is not outside of the question, especially in diets that are full of processed foods that may not have that natural proportion in those foods. And I think Carrie has talked about the 3 original Optima high-dose human digestive strain products that are out there. She's brought a sample in here. The bifidus, that's mostly bifidobacteria for the colon, and the lactobacillus strains as well as bifidobacteria in the high potency at 60 billion. So I don't have a lot of slides on those, but if you have questions, please feel free. But I did want to bring to mind your recollection this latest release, this latest launch addition to the Optima line, and that's for women. That's a segment that has definitely been growing, over 100% growth here in these last sales cycle year. And some of the keys to formulating to women's specific needs, more specific needs, gender-specific needs in these probiotic formulations is to look for lactobacillus cultures. Lactobacilli not only reside in abundance in the small intestine, they also reside in the gut, but they will migrate from there. You can literally orally supplement with lactobacillus species of bacteria, and then within days find those same species in the urinary tract, on the skin, vaginal orifices. All these areas that are so important to women's health are covered with the lactobacillus strains. So we focus more on those. 90% of this 90 billion colony-forming units per capsule is lactobacillus bifidus, lactobacillus strains, and the bifidobacteria is only 10% of that, which is also still important. The large intestine still needs those, helps reduce gas and the like. But predominantly lactobacillus, they're human digestive strains, so very compatible. They know their way around. They know how to get from the stomach, from the small intestines, from those colonies to the urinary tract, to these other areas of the body, because they've evolved with the human digestive tract and become a strain that is specific to that human digestive tract. And high potency and enteric coating, all the good things that you know Primadophilus incorporates into their product line, so that you do get that nice balance, fortifying and balancing vaginal flora, helping maintain healthy vaginal pH, supporting healthy yeast balance, promoting urinary tract health. They can get there. They know how to keep that acid producing so that you reduce the replicative rate of pathological organisms. They also produce some direct antimicrobial agents, bacteriocinogens they call them. And they build that mucous membrane so that there is a barrier between pathologies and your tissues. So it's a real friendly, very important synergism that we have, this symbiotic relationship that we have as we feed them and they feed us back in return. B vitamins, vitamin K, short-chain fatty acids, that help build the gut. Just a wonderful way to enjoy probiotics in these higher potencies. Please.
Question about where probiotics live in the mucosal layer. Do they actually live on top, or do they actually burrow underneath this mucosal layer? Do you know?
They see them first congregate right at the goblet cells, which are the mucin-producing cells of the mucous membrane. They congregate there and will colonize there and then spread from there to completely cover, if they can, if they're allowed to, and their food sources are there and there's not a pathological organism that's preventing it, they will fill in every gap around all that, what they call the crypts of the microvilli will be loaded with that, and all the mucosal surface, all those goblet cells. It's like having the garden that you want. To keep the weeds out, you just have it covered with the species that you want.
I know this is a little technical, but what's coming out of the goblet cells, is that a little higher carb than when it's actually away from the goblet cells? Are they attracted to the carb that's coming from the goblet cells? Are they congregating there?
They
mucus there,
not
we have
fully
slightly-
elucidated, but there are receptor sites that tend to help them clump better at those goblet cells. And these colony-forming units, when they clump, they are much better able to colonize. So there's something in there in the receptor sites that allows for clumping of probiotic bacteria that facilitates, and then that mucilage of your diet, they are consuming and helping the body to convert to the mucin that those goblet cells produce. But I'm not quite sure all the details of the mechanism by which they are attracted to those very cells. But I know there are receptor sites there that do help them express the gene code in probiotics to clump.
Could you talk to us about the blue pill a little bit?
The who?
The colon?
The bifido? Sure. Bifidobacteria is predominantly in the large intestine, where
Okay.
lactobacillus.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I sell probably more Reuteri than any other probiotic that we have. I have great success with it. Our customers come back and, I tell them it colonizes from the stomach to the large colon, cements to the wall, the small, and kind of clears everything out. Why should I sell this Optima relative to the Reuteri?
Well, your numbers are there, where you don't have that same high numbers of the Reuteri. Reuteri is a lactobacillus acidophilus,
Right.
and very helpful in the small intestine for all the things that we've talked about. Reuteri has some good studies on Clostridium difficile. Did you see in the online or in the news or in the press recently how they're using fecal transplants to treat
Yes.
Clostridium difficile? I think I'd much rather snort a capsule of this than have that tube feeding someone else's feces into my gut to treat Clostridium difficile.
I think so too.
So some nice studies on that. And it is an early probiotic. This, in fact, is what led us to know a little bit about that gene expression for clumping, because Reuteri lends that gene.
Now,
to
were you
other
the first company
species.
to introduce the
Reuteri.
particular strain?
Yes, to
Yeah.
the United States, yeah. Now, there are various different strains of the species Lactobacillus reuteri, and it's still a good one. But you got hundreds of different types, and so diversity is still a much better strength for whatever pathologies you're also going to be exposed to. Still good. You're getting 5 billion colony-forming units of the blend that includes reuteri in there, and so that's going to be very effective. That's reaching that threshold for kind of treatment and repair and to prevent the populations of pathologies. But these numbers really can't be beat in terms of when you are suffering and there are already hundreds of billions of pathological organisms fighting for dominance. You need numbers to come against that and make sure that you get that balance going. And the bifidobacteria is going to reduce gas, something that reuteri is not as effective in doing. Reuteri will produce good things for you, and bacteriocins, and all the things that lactobacillus bacteria will do. Bifido helps to decompose, to cleanse, to detoxify, to break down ammonias and hexanes and methanes and reduce that gas. And will still help produce those short chain fatty acids, because your colon is sloughing off the mucous membrane and replacing it nearly every day. Every 29 hours, basically, you are replacing the entire mucous membrane of the large intestine. That's why we're so prone to mutations within the cancerous cells within the large intestine. That's why this is so focused on colon health, colon support, because it will help produce those fatty acids that helps a healthy lumen and mucous membrane be replenished day in and day out in the large intestine.
So you have a lot of pathological bacteria and you're taking 90 billion good ones, and they're going to kill off some of the bad ones. What's your detox effect for most people on 90 billion?
Yeah, we worried about that when we came out with the first Optima at 35 billion. We even had it in the presentations because we didn't know. Oh, you might get some die-off, you might experience some gas. If you've got a large candida population, these are going to go in and have a little tussle, and you're going to have die-off, and never materialized.
Really?
And we're seeing at 900 billion colony-forming units a day, none of this ill effect from these large quantities.
From people who are really sick or people who are relatively healthy?
Both. In the clinical studies where we're working with very high dosages during illness, we're not seeing any gastrointestinal distress except for from the original parasite or whatever that person was suffering from. No additional stress when you are incorporating those things. And again, we go back to those, what is the research is starting to catch up with our perceptions. We're getting these in the hundreds of billions naturally through our diet, every day, every meal. And so it's not extraordinary numbers that we're consuming, not unnatural quantities. We do see case histories, post-market surveillance, where some people are finding themselves in a diarrhea from taking a large dose of a certain probiotic. But that, when you trace that back, goes back to the manufacturer contamination with a pathological strain, where they didn't keep their equipment, they didn't keep it clean, the environment, and they didn't analyze what was being finished in that freeze-dried cake that is the probiotic. They don't analyze it, scrutinize it enough to see, oh, we got some E. coli. And that's going into the capsules or the liquids or the preparation, and that can create some gastrointestinal distress, is where the case histories of adverse events are being able to trace that back to contamination, not to the probiotics themselves, not to these particular families, Lactobacillus and Bifidobacter.
How does it interact with other probiotics?
As we mentioned, Reuteri has been found, Dr. Reuter identified it, Reuteri has been found to lend that gene to other friendly flora to facilitate clumping, to facilitate colonizing, attaching to the mucous membrane, to the goblet cells, and replicating. So yeah, some of the great science.
Along with Optimum would actually kind of potentiate it?
Certainly for the person, I would recommend it, certainly for the person who is spreading Roundup on their microflora garden, using an antibiotic, right? If they're starting over, then they really ought to get that one that came from mother's milk, that was the first ones that we were exposed to if we were nursed, then get that in there so that it can, AGGH is the gene code that this one has, and other lactobacillus will do this. It's just, these were the first ones to recognize that this lent a gene code to other friendly flora to help set up a diverse population of colonies of probiotics in the gut, in the infant gut, and we'll do it in the gut that's been eradicated with antibiotics in beyond infancy, adolescence and even into adults and our senior years.
And now,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Why don't they put that in the children's formula?
Oh, the powder?
So we're right.
We do have-
Reuteri.
We do have we do have a powder Reuteri.
We do sell the powdered Reuteri. That was going to be my next question about the potato starch in there.
Yeah.
And that